Welcome to an ALP Book Club, where we dive into books we love and share what they're about and our learnings with you. There are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence. Those who lead inspire us. Whether individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. This is a book for those who want to inspire others and for those who want to find someone to inspire them. That's a quote from Simon Sinek from his best-selling book, Start With Why. And not only is it a favorite of entrepreneurs and business owners worldwide, but it's also one of our must-reads here at ALP. It's one of those books that, once you read it, changes how you view storytelling, business, and leadership, which is why we wanted to do a book club about it. Sinek's framework is all about the importance of storytelling. He's, in my opinion, one of the few leaders who truly understands the importance of storytelling and also manages to provide good tools to practice it ourselves. And that's an idea that ALP can get behind 100%. But what does leadership have to do with storytelling? Well, let's open the book and see what Sinek has to say. In this episode of the book club about Start With Why, we'll talk about the first part of Simon Sinek's book. We'll discuss motivation versus inspiration, the golden circle, and the three parts of a successful business: why, how, and what. So let's get started. One thing you'll learn about Simon Sinek through reading this book is that he's pretty much obsessed with leaders. But not just any leaders. Those that meet his criteria are true visionaries. Some people, to quote Sinek, hold a position of power or influence. But these aren't the type of leaders he's interested in. Nope. Simon Sinek is interested in another type of leader, a leader who inspires. Most of us won't have too much trouble fishing examples of inspiring leaders. Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Nelson Mandela are a few classics. But what does an inspiring leader look like in the business world? There are plenty of businesses that make lots of sales, have tons of customers, and a fair amount of influence in the market. But would we consider them true leaders? To answer this, let's look at what Simon Sinek considers a leader, because most of the book deals with this question. And this leads right into one of the main premises of the book: inspiration. What does it look like when a leader is inspiring their followers? Well, they listen to them, right? That's an intuitive answer to this question. Imagine you're looking at a teacher. When she stands in front of her classroom, all eyes are on her. Her students appear to be drinking in her every word. No one is spacing out or looking at their phones. So you might come to the conclusion that her students are inspired by her. And this might be the case, especially in a modern classroom. But unfortunately, inspiration is not the only reason students listen to their teachers. Perhaps the class has a test the next day, and the students are terrified that they won't pass if they miss something. Or maybe the teacher has promised to dismiss the class 15 minutes early if they show that they are paying attention. So it's possible that the students aren't actually inspired by the teacher at all. They're just scared about the test tomorrow, or tempted by the possibility of getting to go home early. This is what Simon Sinek calls manipulation. Manipulation is when something causes you to listen to someone that's not grounded in your true desire to follow them. We see this in business all the time. Customers might buy a product because the price is low, but this doesn't mean that they have any true desire to do business with the company. They're just tempted by the prospect of saving a bit of money. And it follows that the moment another company offers them a similar price, they go and buy from them instead. Easy come, easy go. Or as Simon puts it, manipulation leads to transactions, not loyalty. Lower the price of your product enough and people will buy it. And they'll continue buying it as long as your prices stay low. But don't be fooled into thinking that you have gained any loyalty from these customers. The second your competitor lowers their price as well, your customers will switch to buy from them. Now, contrast this to companies like Apple. Apple is able to sell products at high prices without resorting to sales and promotions. They don't employ the manipulations typical of other companies. Yet, Apple sells products. No one can deny that. Customers are loyal to them regardless of price. And why is this? Well, it's because Apple fans truly believe in the company and its vision. And that's because Apple exhibits the signs of leadership. Not leadership by manipulation, but leadership by inspiration. And this ties in to Sinek's next major framework, the Golden Circle, which explains how companies like Apple do this. The Golden Circle is a framework that's actually based on a number, the golden ratio number. And the number starts out with 1.618 and continues on. There are many decimal points after that 1.618. And what's interesting about this number, which is just a ratio, is that mathematicians, biologists, artists, and architects all notice that this ratio of 1.618 seems to come up a lot in each of their fields. If it's safe to do so, hold one of your arms straight out in front of you, palm up. If you're wearing sleeves, roll them up past your elbow. Now, what you're looking at is a classic example of the golden ratio. The length of your hand from the fingertip to the wrist will be a 1.6 ratio to the distance between your wrist and the inner crease of your elbow. This pattern is repeated all over the body, and not just your body. The same pattern can be found throughout the living world, from seashells to trees. It's also common in art and architecture as the standard for pleasing shapes and patterns. If you've ever seen Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, which is this man outspread in circles, that's a picture all about the golden ratio. Simon Sinek sees a similar concept echoed in successful businesses, a perfect ratio of 3 different traits. When these traits are balanced in the right proportion, the business is in sync. It gives off an aura of balance and authenticity that attracts loyal customers. And when that ratio is off, well, customers can sense it. They might buy from it if the price is right. However, they won't display the same type of loyalty you see with fans of companies like Apple. So what are these traits that make up the golden circle? Well, the easiest way to envision this is to picture a business like a circle. At the very core of the circle is the company's why. Moving out, the next circle is how, and the third most outer circle is what. In Sinek's books, you can see this clearly drawn out, like a bullseye. In the center, you have that one small circle that says why. Enclosing this circle is a second, larger circle that says how. And finally, the outermost circle, the largest one, is a layer called what. And it's only when these 3 things are in the correct balance that you can get the type of company that Simon Sinek is describing, a company that inspires. Now, before talking about how to use this diagram, let's just go into each of these layers and see what he means by the names that he gave them. We'll use Dell, a computer company, and Apple's less sexy competitor, as an example of how each layer reveals more information about a company. And we'll actually start with the outermost layer, the what, the largest one. This category is the simplest. It's the simple details of what a company does. This layer is easy to identify both by customers and companies. In the case of Dell, everyone knows what Dell makes. They make computers. That's what they do. That's the outermost layer of the circle, what. The second layer, the middle layer, how, refers to how the company does what they do. A good company will usually have a clear answer to this. For example, how does Dell make computers? Do they do it cheaper than other companies? Are their products better quality? Do they have a smoother supply chain? This is the middle layer. How does the company do what they do? The third layer, the innermost one, this is the why layer. And the thing about the why layer is that very, very few people can actually articulate the why of a company. Why does Dell make computers? I don't really know. Do you? To make money, probably. But now let's say I asked an Apple fan the same question about Apple. Why does Apple make computers? Well, if you're an Apple fan, you'd probably say something like to push boundaries, to challenge the status quo, to change the landscape of technology, to make technology simple and accessible to the everyday user. Customers know why Apple makes computers. They know because the company knows. Apple knows why they exist, and what's more, they can clearly articulate it. And Sinek would argue that it's the why that makes customers truly loyal to a company. Sure, Dell can sell computers, but can they sell computers that are more expensive than their competitors? Probably not. But Apple can. And that's because Apple customers understand the why of Apple. They believe in it. Buying an Apple computer isn't just about the price, the way it might be if they bought it from another company. And so that's the golden circle. The formula for a truly successful company starts with why, moves out to how, and then finally establishes its what. However, too many companies work the exact opposite. They decide what they want to do, then decide how they will do it. And only then, if at all, do they stop to consider why they're doing it in the first place. And when they do this, the golden circle gets out of whack. And without the golden circle, all you'll ever see are transactions and miss out on any hope of truly loyal customers. And to quote Sinek, instead of asking what should we do to compete, the question must be asked, why did we start doing what we're doing in the first place? And what can we do to bring our cause to life, considering all the technologies and the market opportunities available today? You have to start with why. So hopefully you now have a good sense of the three areas that make up a company and how companies hit the golden circle when they keep their why at the very core of what they do and how they do it. And now here's where things get really cool. Because if the book ended here, honestly, I would be a little bit disappointed. But if you look at the human brain, and this is the part of the analysis that I think Sinek really brings to life, you'll see that there are layers there as well. The innermost layer is the limbic system, and that's where our emotions come from. Feeling happy, sad, angry, or jealous, well, you can thank your limbic system for that. That inner circle within your brain for generating all of those feelings, and only those feelings, because this part of our brain only allows you to feel. It doesn't give you any ability to express those feelings in words. And for that, you need the next layer of the brain, which is the neocortex. That's the area that gives us the ability for analysis and language, that helps us communicate that we're angry, and even analyze why we're angry. So, to put it simply, our emotions happen before we have the words to explain them. It's only after an emotion has occurred that we can start figuring out how to describe it. And Sinek explains that this is why most people have trouble explaining why they married the person they married. Most of us try to explain it. She's funny, he's smart, she's talented, he's a good listener. But these are actually all rationalizations. There could be just any other person who's also funny, smart, talented, a good listener, and we still wouldn't want to marry them. So these qualities aren't the real reason that we chose our partners. We have other reasons that have more to do with our emotions than our rational brain, things that might not be able to be expressed in language. This idea can be extended to how we make decisions. Most of us decide things because they feel right, and if we provide a reason for that decision, it's often something we thought of after the fact, a rationalization of that feeling. Of course, we're capable of making rational decisions. We are, for the most part, able to review the data and understand what decision makes the most sense, but these decisions take much longer to make, and they're much more effortful. If you've listened to our book club on thinking fast and slow, or just read the book, you'll know that these decisions are what Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning behavioral psychologist, terms System 2 versus System 1. They take much more effort. And honestly, they're not always necessarily better quality than gut decisions or System 1 decisions. And it's important that Sinek puts all of this in a framework because it helps us realize that customers won't necessarily choose us for rational reasons. They're more likely to choose us because something feels right. And not only customers, but employees and partners as well. And so if buying a Mac feels like the right decision, then a customer will buy one regardless of whether it makes sense on paper. The Mac could be more expensive, heavier, have a shorter shelf life than any other computer, but none of that matters. It feels right. And where does that feeling of being right come from? Well, you guessed it. It comes from the company's why. And this is what's really cool, because in this way, the golden circle actually mimics how the human brain is structured. We first have our instincts, the true reason we do things, which is that inner limbic system, and in the golden circle, it's the why, and only then, wrapped around that inner circle, do we fill in the details, the how and the what. And to reiterate, because this is the crux of Sinek's whole framework, a company will only feel authentic to themselves and to their customers when the three parts of the golden circle are in ratio, when it's clear that a company has a strong reason for existing, when that reason informs how they do things and what they choose to do. The customer feels that this is a company that they can trust. They feel fulfilled when they purchase from them, even if the product isn't the cheapest or highest quality in the market. And like we said, that type of customer loyalty won't come from the logical part of the brain. It's formed in the limbic system, where emotions are processed. In other words, the customer simply feels that it's right. And that gut feeling is able to happen when the customer senses that the company's golden ratio is balanced. And that's the first part of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, where he explains his theory of the golden ratio. In the next episode of this book club, we'll look closer at leaders themselves and how they build a company that starts with why, because that's the second part of the framework, which is really interesting and involves storytelling so much. But before we get to that, I have one more story for you. And this is the story of Southwest Airlines. And it's a story that will illustrate everything we've learned from this book so far. It's the story of the most profitable airline in history, the airline that never passed a year without turning a profit, including years with events like gas strikes and even September 11th. But let's start at the beginning. When Rollin King and Herb Keller first founded the airline back in the 70s, Southwest wasn't a particularly remarkable company. Not at all. In fact, they basically copied the business model of another airline called Pacific Southwest. Sound familiar? This airline also did short-haul flights between different states. So what set Southwest apart from other similar airlines? Well, it was, you guessed it, or I hope you did, it was their strong sense of why. And that sense of why was incorporated into the company from the very beginning. When Southwest first started back in the 70s, the average person didn't fly very often. In fact, only 15% of travelers even used airlines. The rest may do with buses and trains, and that's who Southwest saw as their target audience. They wanted to create a service that would fit the average traveler, the one who might think that air travel wasn't for him, the one who believed that flying was too expensive, too high class, too complicated, the one who was likely to say, I'll just take the train. Sinek defines the why of Southwest as, we're the champion of the common man. That was their reason for existing. That was their why. And everything else we know about Southwest, its cheaper prices, fun atmosphere, easy-to-use services, is derived directly from this one sense of purpose, to be the champion for the common man. And what this means is that Southwest fans will stay loyal to the company even if there's another company promising cheaper tickets, or a more fun atmosphere, or a booking system that's simpler to use. And this is because for people that connect to Southwest's why, the airline feels incredibly authentic. Every detail of the company is derived from the core reason for existing, to be the champion for the common man. And just to show you one last time that the true power of a company lies in its why and not its how or what, let's look at the case of two other airlines that try to follow in Southwest's footsteps. And 3 decades after Southwest Airlines established itself as the airline for the common man, 2 other airlines decided that, hey, they also need to offer their customer a lower cost option. And those were Delta Airlines and United. So in 2003, Delta launched Song, a cheap alternative to Delta, and shortly after that, United Airlines launched TED, its own low-cost offering. They were each built after the Southwest model. They were simple, fun, and cheap. Recognize either of those airlines' names? Most people don't, and that's because both airlines failed less than 5 years after they launched. And the reason for this was simple. The airlines both copied Southwest's how and what, but neither of them managed to replicate its strong feeling of why. That they were the champions of the common man. And companies are constantly talking about how they need to differentiate themselves, find some way to set themselves apart in today's crowded marketplace. And what I think this story, the failure of the airlines, TED and Song, show us is that it's not enough to differentiate yourself through the what you do or how you do it. In order to truly stand out, you have to differentiate yourself at your core, which is why do you exist? And how is this different from why other companies exist? And again, it's not only for your customers' sake, but it's also for your own sake, for your employees' sake, for why you wake up in the morning every day. And if you know your why, everyone who works with you will know your why, as long as you stick to that golden ratio. And with that, we'll end the first part of our book club discussion on Simon Sinek's wonderful Start With Why. Before I leave you to start doing some inner reflection and figuring out why you do what you do, let's quickly review the concepts we've learned from Sinek in this discussion. The first is the difference between manipulation and inspiration. We learned how to tell the difference between a company that manipulates and a company that inspires. It's easy to manipulate a customer into buying your product by lowering the price. But a company that truly inspires its customers will be able to sell products even if their prices aren't the cheapest in the market. After that, we went on to talk about the golden circle. Just like we can recognize certain patterns as more harmonious than others in nature, we can also sense when a company's values are in the right place. What gives us this sense of harmony? Well, there are 3 parts that make up the whole: why, how, and what. First, the company must be founded on a strong why, a reason for existing. After that, the why gets translated into how they do things. And finally, this all must be reflected in what the company actually does. Next episode about this book, we'll be discussing different types of leaders and what sets the mediocre ones from those who have the power to change the world. See you there.